Hello, everybody. This is Paul Herman, the Prince of Motivation and host of Zaka Presents My Journey. We're creating this votable and positive platform where you can get inspired and motivated from different leaders from our community. Today, our guest is Kathryn Ross, who is the COO of Venture Back. Kathryn, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate the opportunity to speak with everyone.
Oh, come on. And our listeners are ready for you, right? They don't have a lot of our listeners don't have access, at first to, you know, if they're not looking at it in the description of all the wonderful things you've done, the accolades and stuff. So we're gonna break a lot of those things down and talk a little bit more about those hardships and how you got there. But before we dive in and talk about all those things, if you could do us a big favor, just give us a little bit of an understanding of your cultural background and where you grew up.
So I was born in Jamaica, in Kingston. I am the youngest of six. And when I was five, I will not date myself with the years in which that was, but my parents just decided that, the opportunities in Jamaica to just make sure that they can put food on the table for us was going to be difficult. So we moved to Miami. So I actually grew up in Miami. But true Jamaican, household, went back every year, grandparents, cousins. My parents eventually did move back to Jamaica, although now that they're getting older, we're bringing them back towards us so that we can make sure that they are taken care of as they age. But yeah, it's as I mentioned, a full Jamaican family with the deep focus on education, on job performance, and all those kinds of things. But I loved every bit of it. Literally, just had some ackee and saltfish yesterday.
See, I knew something was up when I saw the last name Ross.
Yeah, well, Ross is my married name.
I said, hold on, it could come out Ross,
Well, it could be Ross.
Wagwan Ross.
You gotta be careful with that, but yes, no.
Yes, true. Yeah. My mother's Jamaican as well too.
Oh,
She's
she?
she's from Portland.
Portland, okay.
Yeah,
all
Portland,
right. Well,
Jamaica, and my father's from St. Lucia, Castries.
okay, so you crossed islands there. Both
Yes.
my parents from Jamaica, Kingston, and up near Ocho Rios.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Boss status right there. Did ackee and saltfish.
Ackee and saltfish. My mother made it. I was like, I'm
come on, Miss Rose.
in.
Okay. Now, a lot of individuals that have come on the show and talked about if they were from the islands, right? Everyone's got their own highlight on the island, right? Everyone's like, oh, Trinidad this, Grenada this. Since you're from the yard, just like the brethren himself, just please let the listeners know what's so beautiful about Jamaica. And like when you were growing up in your childhood, like what made it so special?
First I will say this. I haven't been able to go to any other island because the one time I said I was going to, the whole family was like, why are you not coming back to Jamaica? What's wrong with Jamaica? So I haven't been to Trinidad or any of those other places to be able to judge. So this is not no disrespect to any of those other countries, which I'm sure are absolutely beautiful. But Jamaica's home. It's that place where you go to where the island is just beautiful, where you've got the trees, you've got the beach, it's right beside each other. You don't have to go hours out of your way to be able to see one or the other. For me, it's the memories of childhood. And even now, my parents, because they have a home there, it's standing on their balcony, reaching out and picking a mango off the tree, right? That for me is what Jamaica is basically standing in your house and you can see the ocean in the distance. You've got beautiful weather. Somewhere, down the street, someone's playing some reggae music, probably Bob Marley coming through.
Come on. You must.
That's Jamaica. I don't know how else, to describe it other than, it really is paradise. And, anytime it has changed significantly from when I was a child. So there's a lot of things that used to exist that, that don't anymore. But it's just evolved with the times. And it's still a place that, even my kids now, want to go back to just to be peaceful, right? It's the place where we go where they don't get to play, video games and things like that. It's like, no, go outside, go
Yep.
to the
Come
beach,
on.
go wherever. This is that place, right? Where you're not
Mm-mm.
watching TV and you're not on your video games. So
Mm-mm.
I love the
I do.
island. And it's peace.
Mm.
So you
I
see my
do.
background.
Yeah.
It's all about the ocean, the sunsets, the waves, and Jamaica definitely gives you that.
Yeah. There's something about the Jamaican culture, and a lot of the individuals that have come on the show that are of Jamaican descent. One thing is the vibration. I give it to all the Jamaican individuals, thought leaders that have come on. Everyone had like this, like you felt like the conversation was like right in front of you, not even in a screen. It was like they were
Mhm.
in your living room or in your
Yes.
kitchen or in your office, wherever it is. The vibration. I love the fact that the culture was just always big on music, and
Absolutely.
dance. Like that's one group of individuals. No matter where I go, I could just tell they're Jamaican when they get together in their little clusters and stuff like that. I remember going to Kingston, and you could have like 20 different groups all doing 20 different dances, and it's just doing on repeat. And I would be like,
Mhm.
"This is how we going to dance tonight?" I'm like, "But hey,
Yes.
look, but we was in the heart of Kingston, right?" And that's where from some of the greats dances that have originated a lot of these dance hall movements that have
Yes.
spread around the world, right? And
Ab-
things like when you think about dance and how the Jamaican culture has truly impacted dance, so from just being in Jamaica, being the movement, being born and raised in Jamaica, to then
mhm.
traveling around the world to being implemented into something like Zumba,
Right.
right?
Right.
And being
Yep.
like and something so commercialized, right? Something so it was like the mango. That's how I describe it, or I think about it. It's that mango that they pick and they say, well, this is nice little mango, but the mango was born and raised in Jamaica.
Hmm.
You might take it back to the States, wrap it all up. You know how they do.
Absolutely. You say vibration, I call it the heartbeat. I mean, it truly is a heartbeat that carries you through. And that heartbeat transitions, as you mentioned, into sound, which is the music. I had the privilege of going to Africa on with a nonprofit a couple years ago. And so surprised. You've seen the Bob Marley, biopic and things like that, but so surprised to be in Accra in Ghana. And there's this whole museum, right,
Yeah.
that is, dedicated to him and the music. And it's just really impactful to see how much the music, the culture, and everything else is infused into other parts of the world.
Mm-hmm. And to know it came from that, so it's good to be a part of that. What is like one of the biggest lessons you learned during that transitional period? Coming from Jamaica into the States. I mean, obviously, I know that the weather was definitely a big culture shock, and I know that obviously the environment was definitely there was no mango trees in possibly in
Well,
Miami that you could kind of pull
there's
from.
mango. Well, there probably is. There wasn't at our house, but somewhere in Miami. You know, um, I think for most Caribbean families, absolutely for my Jamaican family, one of the biggest things that I mentioned before, and it still cultivates through even to me and my kids now, is just education.
Mm,
And it was a focus on school and the focus on, excelling, if you will, within school and whatever you were moving to. I think that the biggest cultural shift, my mother still talks about it to this day, is, in Jamaica, as soon as you are potty trained, you are in school. So at 2, right, you start in, what's, I guess, considered pre-K here, but you literally start reading, writing, arithmetic. So, I was doing that at 2. We moved to the States. I barely 5. And kids didn't start kindergarten until they're 5 years old. And so, we moved here. My mother was horrified that I couldn't go to school, right? Until I turned 5, number one. And then number two, I had to go to kindergarten. And kindergarten, they took naps. And
yeah,
she's
you
like,
like, well, hold on, what we doing?
exactly. She's like, she's doing math. Why is she taking a nap? Right. And so I think that was the big cultural shift, was just the difference in the concept of what education is,
Yeah,
and
perspective on it. Yeah.
and how that sort of drives through. It ended up that a couple years later they had this, they say, okay, she's far ahead of the kids in first, so they ended up moving me forward, so that I was at least commensurate with the other kids in my classroom. But I think that was one of those biggest things. But even in addition to that, the families of the kids who were, born here in the United States, they also had a very different concept of education
Yep.
than folks coming in from outside, right? And you just, it um, there was a lot more focus, if you will, on things like socialization and play dates and things like that. Whereas for my
Yes.
parents, it was like, no, you're here to go to school, go to
That come on,
school.
get the books right after school. Sit at the
Right.
kitchen
Get your
table.
homework done.
Yeah.
You can do the play dates after all that's
And
done, but
and
first get
even
that
after
done.
you got the homework done, there was still some reading to be done.
Reading to be done. My parents put us in because they didn't, once again, didn't understand the concept of summer, you being out of school for 2 or 3 months in the summer. So they put us in summer school for the next grade, right? Not remedial,
Wow.
but for the next grade. So every year, you're going to fourth grade, you were in fourth grade, summer school preparing for it. So by the time we got to fourth grade, we got half of all the stuff that they had already done. So,
You passed the so you're telling me you passed the class previously, but your parents were too unfamiliar with the system and was like, I think they should just go to summer school to prepare for the next year.
no. So put me in kindergarten when I was 5, and I was already reading and writing and things like that. So in first grade, they said, this is not going to work. They moved me to third grade.
Oh,
Right. So I'm
wow.
much younger than the other kids, and they moved me forward to third grade. Um, so fine, I did third grade. It was I'd already done that in Jamaica. So third grade was fantastic. Passed third grade, done. My parents were like, no, 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 no. She's not going to be sitting at home all summer. Put her in the fourth grade summer school. So I hadn't taken fourth grade yet, but I went to the fourth grade summer school and then went to the fourth grade. And believe me, my sister did the same thing where she did, she was
Wow.
in fourth grade going to the fifth grade summer. So because they didn't understand this concept of, 2, 3 months not going to school. What?
Wow. Wow. But you
So
shout out to the family for because that might sound crazy to some the American culture, right?
right.
But to the Caribbean culture, it's like, no, we're not gonna sit here. We're gonna
We're not going to
actually
sit here. And they have them sitting at home watching cartoons for 2 to 3 months to come back to school to do what? No.
yeah, to
So
be so disconnected from the studying.
exactly, exactly,
And the fact
exactly.
that she
And
said, you're going into fourth grade, put her in the fourth grade.
right.
Not even third grade. Fourth grade summers. You haven't even taken the course yet.
Right. But I'm going to go to summer school for fourth grade.
Shout out to
So,
that.
you
Shout out
know,
to that.
and we did it.
Hmm.
Summer,
Congratulations on that.
the summer programs that kids went to, away camps, that was not us. We were in school.
Wow. Wow.
So, yeah,
Congratulations on that.
yeah.
It's I could see the transition and translation and how this is actually how you got to where you got to just by hearing that one story. That one
And
story right there puts it in full perspective what I saw in that bio.
yes, yes. And
I know
everything
where it's
comes
coming
back to
from.
that.
I know there's a lot more things to add to that, but
Right.
and one of the things that I know we want to add to that is let's talk about the three P's.
Okay.
Let's talk about the three P's. Reading in your bio, you have this three P's, and I want to know a little bit more about it, obviously, in our listeners as well too. And why is it
No,
so
absolutely.
impactful?
Look, there's tons of three Ps out there, and three name your letters that people have. I had a mentor at Accenture, and he was presenting at a conference, and he talked about this, and it resonated so much with me that I really sort of took it on. My three Ps are performance, promotion, and purpose, right? And I think it does actually translate very well even to me today, as well as folks who are entering the workforce. The first couple of years, maybe the first year, you're really focused on you know really understanding the job, right? And your goal is, whether you have experience or not, it's to create um, within your colleagues, within leadership, etc., a belief that your expertise or your ability to be productive and generate revenue or whatever it is that you're doing for that company is validated, is essentially based on your work. That's really your performance, right? And it's making sure that you show up every day and you do a really, really good job. It doesn't matter what the guy next door is doing or the girl down the hall or whatever, but what you're doing to generate value. One of the things that we always used to say is, what have you done for me lately? And that's,
That's a hot
that
song.
doesn't stop. It doesn't matter if you are first day on the job or 50th day on the job or 30th year on the job. It's what have you done for me lately? And it's sort of, it's the business world. But once you have established your performance, once people believe and truly see, what you're able to do, then what you're looking forward to is promotion, right? Promotion gives you access to be able to impact other people's lives, access to be able, whether you're managing a team or whether you are, um, elevated to the point where instead of just maybe a coder, you're a designer now. But the promotion now is saying, number one, we're validating the performance that you've done, but we're giving you more skills, more opportunity, more abilities to grow whatever your skill levels are, etc. But now you also have the opportunity to impact other people, right? That is something that I think, for me, was the tipping point, right? There is performance was my ability to manage myself, promotions, my ability to manage other people. And then the third P is purpose. Because there comes a point in time in your career in which that next level of promotion, that next, increase in salary or whatever isn't the thing that drives you anymore. Right? What you're really looking to do now when you hit purpose is, how do I have impact? And for me, I recognize very quickly that whereas it's easy for me, and it's easy potentially for many people, depending on if you're an introvert, extrovert, or otherwise, to work on my own to just drive something to success. Being able to do it with a team, and how you do that, and how you pull a team together to balance everyone's um, areas of things that they do very well or things that I do very well with the things that I don't do very well. How do you surround yourself with the appropriate teams? And then how do you not micromanage? How do you provide them with the skills and access so that they succeed, and in their success, you succeed? That's when, for me, purpose came, into being, where I said to myself, my goal, right? Yeah, I, I want to get promoted and I want to do all those things, but truly it's, how do I give back? How do I give back to people, whether it's in my company or externally?
I think that the way you described that was definitely digestible. I know that when you're thinking, because that's you're talking about it. This doesn't happen overnight.
No,
This
no, it doesn't.
process, right?
Yeah.
But you broke it down in a way to make it very obtainable to someone to be like, okay, look, I got to go in. I start something, whether it's me being an entrepreneur or me working for somebody else. Performance is very important. Showing up, you know, uh, dedicating myself, the numbers, how good am I doing? Then obviously promotion, elevating yourself in your craft, and then obviously, purpose. And I feel like I love how you're ending off with purpose, because ultimately, at the end of the day, when you reach a level of success, you look back and you say, why am I even doing this? There's going to be those moments where you question and say, well, I have all of this. I have my house, I have my car, I have a family, everything, but then am I really happy? And I've seen a lot of executives make it to a level of success and still feel incomplete.
Incomplete and unhappy, and they haven't, and they're not sure what's missing. And if you are looking for that, I think it makes a difference. And I left a career with Accenture after 30 years. I was a managing director, did very, very well, and recognized that what I wanted to be able to give, right, I'd hit the ceiling there in terms of my ability to do it, right? And it was now starting to look externally to say, okay, right, where can I go where I can still do, the things that, and bring my skills and experience to bear, but start doing something that actually starts to be a little bit more impactful in a way that I haven't been able to do as a part of a big corporate. And changing over or switching over to being a COO of a startup is vastly different. And I tell you this, I started over exactly like I did in my early days with Accenture, where my first month was about performance. How do I fit in? Right? Doesn't matter that I was a managing director, chief success, and all. That's all great. But I'm in someplace new now where I'm creating a new dynamic with a new team. And my role and my goal was, in those first, was really about performance. How do I fit myself in? how do I take my corporate experience, not overlay it because it doesn't work necessarily 100% in startup.
True.
How do I, bring those two things together to truly drive value, right, for, this team, for this job, for this work that I'm doing? So I'm very much, even now, still very much in that performance mode as we are all, coming together to move things forward. And even within this, there will come a point in time in which there will be promotion, but purpose, that was the choice that made me say, all right, I loved what I did at Accenture. It provided me with every opportunity that I could have ever asked for 30 years. And it's also given me the opportunity to make a choice to do something different. And in doing something different, doing something that allowed me to once again hit my purpose, which was, how do I give back? How do I build something new in the ecosystem that ultimately will drive not just revenues, but also social impact.
Mm, mm, mm. Well said. Well said. Well said. Now, with the three P's, did that apply to like when you got to college? Like, what was that journey um, at, I want to say, towards the last year of college, in a sense, right? Of studying. You've accomplished a lot. Now you're about to enter into the real world, right? You got your first job. Was Did college even prepare you for what you're about to do on your first job? And did the three P's apply in this first job? Oh, you
Well,
looking up? You looking up? I'm
well,
about to
because
spill the tea.
the first job was the only job for 30 years.
Okay, okay, got you.
So,
Okay.
so here's where the three P's and what I will say, I don't know if you would necessarily categorize it as luck or, as I said before, a window opening. Um, I had been in school for 16 years, from elementary through college, right? There was no, that was summers in elementary school and high school was summer school. Summers in college were internships, right? So it was solid 16 years from there to graduating college. And I had, once again, I'm coming from a family where education is prized. My father had a PhD. He wanted at least one of his children to have a PhD. And so uh, you know, I was graduating and signed up and had a scholarship for my master's and my PhD. And I said, you know what? I've been in school for 16 years. The internships don't count. They were just 2 months in the summer. I really would like to just get 1 year of just work experience where, I just came out of the academic environment, went into the real world for just 1 year and and had that give myself right the airspace, the space in my head to actually look at who I am and what I wanted to do. Um, so went to the scholarship people. They said, okay, deferred my scholarship for a year. The hardest thing was going to my parents, specifically my father, and saying, hey, I know education is the thing, but I think what I would love to do is just to get 1 year, right? And the scholarship's okay, everything's good. 1 year of just true work experience. And they said, okay. And so I went to the career fair on the college campus. Um, didn't really do much research. The first company in line was Anderson Consulting, began with the letter A. They were the only ones I interviewed with because this was supposed to be for 1 year. And 30 years later, I'm still with them. I was still with them. So my father was very unhappy because I did my PhD. Probably about after year one, I actually went back to the university and I said, hey, can I defer for 1 more year? Even though I sort of knew in the back of my head after that first year that I didn't think I was going to go back, but I loved what I was doing. But I asked, and they said yes, which was surprising because usually they don't defer for 2 years. But about 3 months in from there, I said, I'm not going to go back. The hardest thing was once again telling my father and my parents in this case that I was loving what I was doing and it was giving me world skills. It was a global company. It was consulting, which means I wasn't doing the same thing every day. I truly got to put my engineering, hat on in terms of solving problems, for clients and things like that. And I got to travel, right? So, for me, it was the epiphany. So I don't know if I would necessarily say it was the three P's. It was a three P's in the sense that my performance in college and university did set me up for this, because
Okay.
at the end of the day, right, um, uh, as an engineer, that is your goal, is to solve problems. And knowing that at the end of the day, A plus B doesn't necessarily equal one. It may equal 1.257, right? And that's okay, so long as that solves, the problem, and being okay with that. And that was what consulting was, which was a client's going to come to you with a set of problems, and you've got to figure out what's the right things, whether it's technology, people, or otherwise, to put together to actually solve that problem for them. And it could be 1.257. So from that perspective, university was fantastic. Um, what I think the work environment gave to me that I didn't get in college, the real world, is, and I believe it today, knowledge is theory until you put it into practice and it hits reality. And when it hits reality and you have to deal with that, that's when things get real, right? And that's when you truly understand who you are, in terms of if it's a fire to fight, or if it's a Hail Mary that came through, you're like, fantastic that worked. But that's where you figure out for yourself, can I roll? Do I have the resilience to roll with the punches and truly keep going? That's, I think, was the difference between, college and the real world. Is now I'm in a place in which you've got a safe environment to a certain extent in college, right? They grade your papers, you get a grade,
That's
right?
correct.
Real world, this could be people's lives, this could be healthcare, this could be a bunch of different things, and it's real. And there's a level of gravitas to that you just have to sort of bring to it.
Mm, mm, mm. Yeah, that's. Oh, I mean, you are right. 16 years, and having a scholarship and having accesses and resources, and then going back to your family members and being like, it's not like you didn't have it kind of set up, kind of did
Mm-hmm.
scholarship.
Right,
That right there is already a great benefit to have. Right, it's not
right.
like you're like applying and you're like from scratch and then like it costs $75,000 to come to school. Whatever that scholarship cost was, that price was, it was priceless to your parents.
Mm-hmm.
And to see you say, mm-mm, I can only imagine those type of heartfelt conversations, those lonely conversations, because you're at a table by yourself, outnumbered, right? And you obviously don't want to let them down, right? They've put in so much work and helping you get to where you need to get to, and then you're like, I think that's probably all of the thought leaders that have come to a decision like you, and I'm in the same boat as well too. Um, one of those thought leaders that it was very hard to even to fill up into the shoes we needed to even have that conversation, because you're standing up to your parents for like
Right.
the first time in a very intellectual way. Not, I don't want to clean up my room. It's more like, this is my life, that's your life. Like that already is like a big thing. This is who I'm gonna marry, right? When you start having conversations like that, it's a different level now. And the fact that you still
That's when you're truly an adult. You
yes,
truly
yes,
hit it at that point.
we're not talking about cleaning the dishes. We
No,
talk about life. Like,
right.
this is the decisions you're making. We're definitely highlighting your life and what you felt was gonna benefit you. Now, parents are always like, no, 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 we know what's best. But
Yeah.
you have your own heart, right? You have your own feelings and stuff like that. So to be in school or to be at that job and it put a smile on your face, I'm glad that, despite the hardship and that uncomfortable conversation, I greatly appreciate you sharing this story, because a lot of our listeners are probably in the same boat. They're living a double life right now. They're really
Yeah.
trying to figure out like what to do, how to do it. But one of the biggest reasons why they don't do it, it's not just because they're first or second generation immigrants, or they just don't have the information or the knowledge, because it's 2025. You can find things online quickly, right?
Hmm.
Letting down their parents. So I'm glad you shared that story, because it truly resonated with me, and I know it obviously will resonate with our listeners as well too.
Yeah. And I have an 18-year-old who is applying to colleges right now and trying to figure out what he wants to do. And my husband and I are like, we can't tell you that. You've got to figure it out, right? This is the life we chose. This is the life we live. You've got to go find yours. And this is the opportunity that college offers you, is the opportunity to explore what it is that you might want to do. For me, that choice to I had that same feeling going into college. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was a math nerd, loved it, Star Trek kid, right? But does that mean that I knew what I wanted to do? Had no idea, no idea. Even graduating with a 4-year degree, I still didn't know what I wanted to do. And that's why I took that moment to say, I need to clear my head because I've been in school for so long that I can't decide what it is that I want to do because I can't see it. I can only see the books and the classes and all of those things that I've been doing for the last 16 years. And
Mhm.
so that's where, you've got to figure out what it is. There's some people, my youngest, he knows what he wants to do. He's known for years. He's told us he wants to do it. We're like, okay, all right. um, you know, and there's some people who that's them. They know exactly what they want to do going forward. And, it's well, explore some other things, but go ahead and follow your path.
Mhm.
But then there are the others who don't. And that's where you've got to figure out, how do you explore, and with parents who are Jamaican, who are like, go to school. Generally, they wanted a doctor, which is why my father wanted a PhD. Um, uh,
They want to live through us every day. Come on.
and
These people tricking us from childhood.
exactly.
Be a
So,
doctor.
so I'm glad they gave me the grace to be able to do that. Um, and I'm glad that I had the opportunity to then really step into something that opened my eyes. And that's really what I wanted. And 30 years later, in that 30 years, I will say I had 6 different careers within Accenture. And every one of those opened my eyes to something new. And so if folks can, if that's the least of what you get is exploration and opening your eyes to different parts, whether it's industries, people, cultures, etc., that's amazing to be able to do.
Mhm. And you just said it right here. I want to kind of piggyback off of that. You said you worked at one company for 30 years, but you moved around like 6 different times.
Yeah.
There had to been some significant challenges, especially as a leader, an immigrant leader, right?
Oh,
Navigating through
absolutely.
that. So if you could just kind of give us maybe like an incident or something that you could kind of speak on and be like, okay, look, I was here and here, but the transition was from here to here was extremely hard because I was already in a room that I probably wasn't received the right way.
Look, I'm a Black woman in technology. From day one, no one ever believed that I was the leader, right? When I was sitting in a room, I don't know how many times people assumed I was the executive assistant, the receptionist or whatever. And I mean, I can't even tell you how many times that happened, early in my career. I will say I think the most pivotal thing for me is, even when I had become a senior leader, a managing director, right, within the company, I still had a situation in which the leader that I worked for bullied me, right?
Mm-hmm.
To be honest, at the time I was flabbergasted. I was like, is this happening? What's happening here? Right? You would think that if I was junior, um, a uh, new to an experience or a client or something like that, that that would happen. But no, this individual, could not tell you what happened because we'd had a really good relationship up until this point, and then something flipped and something switched, and it wasn't a great situation. And and I look back now, and it was pivotal to me because I'm sitting here thinking to myself, if I knew what to do. Even in knowing what to do, it's still soul crushing. It's still traumatic. It's still, what did I do, right, to bring this situation on, type of thing. Even though at the end of the day, I know that, I did not bring this on,
True.
right, but
True.
knew what the right things were to do. But, I'm in a large organization and there's a lot of people in there, and some people, still don't have, just whether it wasn't race based or anything else, to that extent, as far as I know. It could have been gender based, but at the end of the day, I just said, I'm not going to sit for this. I'm not going to stand for this. And I went to my leaders and I said, hey, look, this is what's happening, right? Here's how I've tried to manage the process, but it's getting worse and it's going to start having an impact on our people and things like that. I just need some help. Tell me how we navigate this. And that was, navigated. And navigated, but in the navigation of it, it once again opened my eyes to I was ready for the race. I was ready for that as a woman in technology, right? Because anytime you go, I mean, even when I was in college in my engineering classes, if there were 3 women in the room, it was a lot. If there was another Black woman in the room, it would have been amazing, but it was never, it never happened. There was, very, from and even from an immigrant standpoint, very few of us in the room, right? Going to an engineering college at that time. So I was ready for it, right? I was ready to come into corporate America and know that these things would happen. It didn't bother me when people thought I was the receptionist, right? Because I was just like, okay, well, you're just underestimating me. It's all good.
Come on, say it out loud.
You just okay. We'll take that forward. We'll make it work. And I never once said who I was. I never once corrected somebody when they assumed that, but my team corrected them. No, she's the leader. My team corrected them.
That's a blessing. That's a
Right.
blessing. That's a blessing right there.
And the reason, was number one, I wanted from a relationship perspective to make sure that if I corrected them, there's a negativity to that relationship that can start. Whereas if somebody else does it, it's a little bit easier. But number two, the same thing. All right, I see who you are. Now I'm going to bring it, right? And
yeah, that's it.
Who I am. So that never bothered me. And
you don't deal with the bad mind people.
Absolutely.
Bad mind.
Exactly.
We're not dealing with the bad mind people.
Not going. No, you can keep it moving. Keep it moving.
Take away yourself.
But this instance, this I wasn't expecting, and I wasn't expecting it because it was somebody I'd had a good relationship with before, and I just didn't know what had switched. Bottom line here, and the thing that I would impart to people, and this is the thing that I didn't understand in the beginning of my career. It's part of purpose. It's part of promotion that you need to understand from day one. Even in college, look to the person to your left and to your right in college. That person is going to get a job, start a company, do something in the next decade, 10 years, 20 years, right? Your network is your thing that opens doors and windows for you, right? Yeah. And for me, that's what saved me in this situation is that I had a network that number one included his boss, who I'd been friends with for decades before I met him, and others around me who were able to give me the appropriate advice to how to manage that situation. So I managed it, and I managed it well, and I managed it well enough to end up leaving that to a new organization that allowed me to actually accelerate my career. And, so it spurred me even more to accelerate.
No, this is nice. This is nice. This is nice. It's sad that I think, whether it was a race thing, I think also it's competition. This is what the culture in America has kind of.
You know what? As I said, I don't know what the genesis of it was because I've never followed up to have a conversation with that individual to say what happened.
There's no need to, yeah.
I didn't need that kind of closure. I was just like, no, you treated me bad. I'm good. I'll move on.
And you are right. I'm like how you're breaking that down because you said something very, very important here. You said I could have responded, but it would have started a negative relationship.
Yes.
Now, granted, you just responding back. A listener, listen, like, well, I would just respond and be like, no, I'm not. I'm the leader, right? Mm-hmm. In someone's head, it doesn't sound negative to just state the facts, right? Mm-hmm. But you were at a place in your life from seeing it back in college to now being in a corporate environment. Just you saying that and reacting back to what they're saying could already cause this negative tension.
Yeah,
right?
Puts them on their back foot. Ooh,
wait, now you corrected me.
Correct.
And so I'm glad that you mentioned that and you mentioned that I never really had to correct them. You let your work speak for itself. And I
Yep.
think that's very important as a thought leader. You got to kill them with kindness. I know sometimes people say, no, you got to go directly at them, punch them, push them over, step all over them, because those people don't respect you, right? But at the end of the day, they want us to do that.
Yep.
They,
Well,
they, they're looking, they're looking for that. They're
they're
looking for the
looking for
story.
that. And don't get me wrong, there are plenty of times where I spoke up, but speaking up in the right context, in the right
That's
time, in the
correct.
right spaces is what creates relationships that last versus the negative relationships that don't. And
And
so you can correct someone, but if you do that in their office, whether it's just the two of you versus in front of a bunch of other people, it's a very different dynamic than if you do that right in that. So know your space, know your people, know who's around you. But once again, that's why I say the network is so key. Before you go into that meeting, you should know who's in there.
that's correct.
There's so much information out there now, right? Whether it's LinkedIn or otherwise, on who you might be meeting, that you should be able to go in there and know what to expect. Every now and again, it might surprise you, but today is very different from a decade or more ago, where there wasn't a ton of information,
Mhm. And
on how people are, who their friends are, who their influencers
who they
are.
following, what's their interest. You can find all that right now.
You could find it all out. And so you can know going in, if you do the due diligence necessary to find that out before you get in there, what to expect.
And
Um,
in your story, you said it, and that's what, and I'm just piggybacking off what you're saying right now. You did try to deal with it on a personal level, but then you said I went to my higher ups
yeah.
and I spoke to them. This shows the level of professionalism, and it shows the level of the steps that you've taken. It wasn't like you didn't try to resolve it personally. Like, I look, I just letting you know A, B, and C. After you realized that that wasn't working, you went to the next step, right?
Yeah.
And you brought in the higher ups. And like you said, finding a safe space, making sure you present it in the right way. Because you said clearly, if you do it in their office, one on one, is totally different than do it in the office with a couple of people to kind of navigate that conversation. So I truly admire you saying I did speak up. I feel
Mhm.
a lot of our thought leaders talked about it in previous conversations, episodes where they were like, one of the hardest things for us was learning how to speak up, how to advocate for ourselves, being someone of color in a room, and all of a sudden being like, how do I speak up? Like, are they going to actually listen to me? Are they going to respect what I'm saying? But clearly, you don't back down for no one. Ross the
No, no,
boss,
no.
right,
And I
guys?
speak up for other people. If I see something or they call me, I'll be like, all right,
Let's go.
but I'm not coming in adversarially. I'm coming in to understand, because there's always three sides to a situation, right? Your side, their side, and reality, right? So
Let's
that's
go.
where,
Reality. Let's go.
right?
That's right.
Because everybody comes at it from a different context. So the same thing can happen to two different people and they heard something completely different, right? And so that's the key, is if you go into a conversation or with an assumption around somebody's expectations, feelings, whatever, then you have already navigated a conversation in a direction that it doesn't need to go. Versus if you go in anticipating to listen and understand their side of whatever happened, and then explaining or saying, okay, could you think about how this might have appeared? Or so there's plenty of times in which being able to have an objective, stepping outside, stepping back, right, to a situation really can help bring people together as opposed to divide them.
Mm-mm. And that brings me to my next question. I mean, I have 30 years, Accenture, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's 30 years of success, 30 years of hardship, right? I'm assuming the three P's is in there. I'm
Yes.
assuming the whole journey from college is in there, and saying, okay, how do I put this into perspective? Those challenges, those roadblocks, all of that. 30 years, you've gone through a lot of stuff, right? A lot of great accomplishments. Could you talk about one of your most proudest moments during that time? You spoke a little bit of, give us a little bit of insight, but give me like one good moment where you were like, this is it. I'm really slinging right now.
So, literally, right off of the situation in which I was not having a great time, was being bullied and everything else, at the end of that, I switched roles. And in that role, right, coming into it, I basically asked, okay, well, what's our inclusion and diversity, right, as a part of this new organization and this role, what's our mandate? And they said, it's whatever you want it to be. And I said, okay, great. And in looking at, we had just done some research that basically showed, I basically joined, in this case, Accenture Ventures, and some research that had been done, and it just showed that underrepresented founders, right, people who were not essentially in Silicon Valley or New York, were getting, and specifically in this case, it was Black entrepreneurs. But if you look at women, if you look at LGBTQ, if you look at, a variety of different demographics, the amount of venture capital dollars that were going to these different groups were less than 1%, overall, less than 3 and 4%, right? And so from that perspective, I said, okay, well, if there's something that I can do, there's a lot of programs that are done internally for our people. I would like to do something externally, right? And this goes to my purpose, right? I would like to create the Black Founders Development Program, right? Which, truly wasn't necessarily just Black founders. It was looking at underrepresented founders across the board. But we were really focused on how do we make sure that we create visibility, we create access for founders who aren't sitting in Silicon Valley in New York, who have fantastic ideas and really just need to get the chance to pitch.
That's very nice. To take on you already have a lot of roles and job titles, right? And then be like, you know what, I'm gonna take on this. And this is a big undertaking. This ain't even like little stuff. This is on some you won't know until you know. That's what they used to tell me in school all the time. You won't know until you know. So the fact that you did the research and found out, that's like statistics, right? Numbers don't lie, right? At the end of the day, unless people move the numbers around. We know how some people do sometimes, right?
Yeah.
But we talk about real numbers, the reality, right? Because it's their side, your side, and the reality. The reality is that those numbers don't lie. So the fact that you find out like 1% or less than 3%, right? That's massive. Like, where's all this money going? It's not going to the people, right? That need it.
No, it's going to people. It's just not going to. It's not giving everybody a chance to be a part.
It's not equal. It's not equal. It's not giving people a fighting chance. It's not giving people, and some of those people have some really great ideas, but it would never come into fruition because they don't have the proper funding. And this is when people get annoyed. It's when they take money out of their own pocket. They take money out of their kids' college tuition or some their last bit of savings to kind of launch this big idea and still not have the backing that they need. Versus the other individual on the other side of the fence has backing the minute they open up to the minute they say, you know what, I don't even want to do this anymore. I'm gonna sell it and make millions of dollars. So I'm glad you brought it to the attention of these individuals because stuff like that needs to be shared.
Yeah, right? Absolutely. And I had the privilege that my leadership was completely behind me, right? I mean, I named it Black Founders Development Program. The P was small, and our acronym was BFD because it was a big deal, right, within that company to be able to do something exactly like this. And I was incredibly honored that they gave me the opportunity to do this and to drive it forward. And, when I left, I was incredibly honored to pass the baton, to another Jamaican.
You don't know, say yardis and things.
Look.
Come on, we must give thanks and praise.
You must. But to be able to, to pass the baton to, to someone, in this case, to John Smith, who's driving it forward and doing some really, really great things, because I felt that, okay, I've done this for 2 to 3 years. I want to make sure that I'm not being stagnant, that my ideas may or may not be the only ones or the best ones, or, right, I wanted to make sure that there was always going to be a freshness, if you will, to this program that would evolve with the times, right? And so I felt it was the right time for me to transition, which is, when I decided to leave Accenture. But I am incredibly, still look back at the impact I was able to make both on the company, Accenture, but on these founders themselves and the ability to give them access and visibility externally with other corporate venture capital groups as well as other venture capital groups.
Well, congratulations on that. Congratulations. And I'm glad that you passed it on to somebody else and got them up and running, and you laid down the groundwork in order for someone to be successful.
Yes.
Sometimes people build something and they build it very sloppy with no foundation, then they pass it on to the next person, and then they question, why did it fail? Why did it fall? Why did it not thrive the way it should have? But it's because the transition between the next person, and it kind of puts it. I'm glad that you did it the right way again, because your your time frame of you doing it, people looked up to you. They already said whatever you want to do, right?
Mhm.
You help the next person out by paving the way for them and helping them
Mhm.
know some of the systems in place to be a really good leader. Sometimes I've seen, and our thought leaders have talked about, the transition from our black and brown individuals to the next one. Sometimes we don't really pass that flame over the right way, that
Mhm.
torch, which in turn causes them to fail, fall short. And then at that point, the company says, we don't need that program anymore.
Right.
But
Right.
and this is real life, because we're talking about money, we're talking about time. If you're not making me money, or if this program is not making me money, or it's not being a value of service here at our company, we need to go. But
Right.
sometimes that passing of the torch is not done the right way, which in turn causes the next individual to kind of fall short. And that's when it's like, we got to do a better job, guys. We got to do a better job. So I thank you and I commend you. Like, you're really like, you checking the boxes today. You just checking the boxes. I know we started off this conversation already
Well,
top, but you ain't going nowhere.
so here's the thing. I firmly believe that I don't care what you do. Anything in life, it takes a village. If you could do anything by yourself, it could only be as successful as you as an individual can be without anybody else. And if you have customers or people who want to buy the product, you need other people. And so, from that perspective, I have always believed that if I help other people be successful, ultimately, right, that drives my success as well, right? Because that is what creates either great teams who drive the business forward, or once again, opportunities, right? Because people see your willingness to give, your willingness to serve, your willingness to help them elevate. And eventually that comes back as, you know, you get a phone call, right? I got several phone calls today that I was not expecting and wasn't anticipating. And it was just based on, once again, opportunities that I've used to say, I can help this person, right? I can leave this place, leave this organization, leave this business, leave this opportunity better than when I came in, and that it will continue to drive itself forward. That's my ultimate goal, and I know that in doing that, once again, that will continue to propel me forward.
And could you express a little bit more about the venture back? How did that, from the Black Founders Development Program, how did we get into like venture back?
So I met, this was a startup founder, right? He hadn't even started the business. We happened to meet at an event several years ago, and we were just in conversations. We developed a friendship, nothing else other than that, beyond conversations. And then he, at some point in time, said, I have an idea, right? Take a look at this. And I said, okay, that's different. That's interesting. That's a game changer, right? And ultimately, right, what venture backed is about how do you revolutionize, if you will, the venture capital ecosystem, which has operated the same way for decades, right? But what if you were able to provide a digital engagement and social networking platform that enables you to power informed decisions, right? So as a venture capital, you're about to write a check. And in many cases, right, once again, this is the whole reason I started the Black Founders Development Program. You write that check to somebody you know because they know your neighbor, they went to school with your kids, but there's some sort of connectivity in there that gives them a level of faith that, you maybe know what you're doing, right? To your point, the people who get the checks over and over again, right? Because they're in an ecosystem, in a community in which they know each other, right? And success, failure, etc., they feel comfortable because I know that person. Versus, hey, great idea, but I don't know you. Will you be able to do it? Should I write that check? How do you make that decision about where you write that check? And then how do you feel comfortable after you've written that check to make sure that, that this business is actually going to succeed? And that's what venture back does, is it creates that digital platform that it helps you make those decisions. by looking 360 at not just the founder and their product, but the investor and what their investment thesis is, and making sure there's a good match.
So you help the individuals investing, but you also help the individuals pitch it as well.
Correct. It's not just pitching, it's end to end, right? It's starting your business and everything else. And ultimately, if you look at what my last days with Accenture was sitting on our venture capital committee, or investment committee, looking at startups, working with the Black Founders Development Program to give them access and visibility, and switching, right? If you think about my purpose in terms of wanting to build and wanting to give back, what Venture Back does is now I'm helping to build something that's net new, but it gives back in the sense that it democratizes. It doesn't matter whose name, right, is on, it's about the data. And does the data support that this company is going to be able to drive the business forward? Does the data support that this investment thesis is a match for this founder in terms of driving things forward? So it doesn't become a, do you know me? Do I know you? It becomes, is that a great idea? And do you have the skills and everything necessary to make sure it's successful? And do we have the data to support that?
Ross the boss. You just out here rossing it up. Saucing it up, rossing it up, whatever we doing, you are just doing it. Before I kind of get into our last question, right? I want to say it's been an honor to have. Obviously, reading about someone is totally different than actually having a conversation with someone. And I feel like a conversation that we had today was eye-opening for myself as well too, because you said a lot of things that kind of just reassure me and just in my own life, right? And I could only imagine our listeners listening to your story, talking about your resilience, how you stood up for yourself, how you advocated. You talked about mentorship. You talked about, finding the 3 Ps. Like, you dropped a lot of gems. And I'm so happy that you're willing to share those things. Sometimes people gatekeep once they get to a certain place in their life. They're like, oh, you know what? I don't gotta give back. You know what I'm saying? So to come on this platform and to be able to freely share those things that you work so hard to develop, right? It just speaks volumes to the character that you truly are. And I know, obviously, your family members are very proud with the decision that you made not to go back to school, but to
My
continue.
dad was up until the day he passed was still very bitter about it, I will say.
Well, shout out to Pops. I'm saying he
Yeah.
knew what he was talking about, but I
But
think
he
just
knew I
wanted you
was
to be
happy.
Yeah, that's right. He just wanted you to be happy. So I'm glad that you have made a path for yourself to be happy, but also provided a level of happiness for other individuals along the way. And I
Yeah.
feel like that sometimes is a hard thing. They always say take the speck out of your eye first before you take it out of someone else's, right? And to know that you're willing to do it, get your hands dirty, right? It's a beautiful thing, and it's a hard thing to do, and it's only a selected few people that could do it and do it well. And Ross the boss, you are that person.
I'm going to take that phrase, Ross the boss. I don't know if I can get my children to call me that, but we'll see.
I don't know. Ross the boss. That's how I said. That's like some Caribbean name on the, because every Caribbean person in Jamaica had a nickname, right?
Right. Right.
Wagwan King, Wagwan Dumpling.
Yes.
Yeah, so Ross the boss.
Right. I'm going to take that home and see if I can make that one work. But I really
Okay.
do appreciate the opportunity. I certainly wasn't perfect. I learned a lot in those 30 years. I'm always willing to talk to people about, my journey. I don't think it's necessarily, I think it's my journey, but, hopefully has some nuggets in there that are helpful to others in terms of, things they can think about that may work for them.
Mm-hmm. And is there any one last bit of advice that you could give? Are you kind of like start to tap into something right there? I just want to make sure we leave away with that last gem from Ross the
My
boss.
last gem is the thing, as I said, I'm still marveling at today, as I said, and the number of phone calls just out of the blue, not just today, but this week, right, that I just wasn't anticipating. And all of those were as a result of my network. Once again, look to everybody to the left and the right of you. Keep your relationships, even if you catch up every 6 months, every 3 months, whatever, reach out and make sure that you do that, because you never know where someone might say, hey, didn't you? I got
Yes.
an opportunity, right? Or do you know about? And, so I've been very blessed in the sense that I have those opportunities that have been coming in, but they're also based on the fact that I've given, right, and I continue to give, and I look for opportunities to give, to help, as someone said, to serve. And when you do that, ultimately, that ultimately propels you forward. So, I'll leave it at that. To say that my village is strong, and I keep adding to my village. As time goes by, and in doing that, the support that you get that's necessary to lift you up when you're down or to drive you forward is tremendous.
Well, Ross the boss, I just want to say thank you again for joining us this evening. And again, just giving us a lot of great insight on your journey, the goods, the bads, the uglies, and sharing a lot of gems with our listeners. I greatly appreciate your time. And again, for just being present with us.
Thank you.
And I want to let the listeners know, if you want to hear more inspirational stories like Kathryn, please check us out on ZakaConnect.com. Follow us on our social at Zaka Connect, and follow our feed, Zaka, wherever you listen to your podcasts.